Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit Professional Show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show.
I am a failed real estate investor. Here's what I learned. Hi. I just closed on the sale of my second investment property, and I'm officially out of the game. I read this sub religiously for 2 years before making a leap and buying property. So I thought I'd come back here and share what I learned and what I should have done differently. My story is very common: high income, high cost of living area, property here is crazy expensive, want to diversify, etc. I started looking for places to invest. After a couple failed attempts and about 6 months of research into cities, I decided on a Midwest city. I flew out there and met a property manager and realtor, business partners, and eventually bought 2 duplexes. I was super excited to start my real estate empire. I ran the numbers hundreds of times. The rents were almost double the payments. What could go wrong? Then reality hit. There was always something happening with the properties. Always. Sometimes big stuff like the AC breaking. Stupid stuff too. Every time the PM sent someone, it would be another $200 to $300 out of my pocket. We had 2 evictions, across 4 units total, and unit turnover was 10K every time, and that's after I pushed back on most of the stuff the PM insisted on fixing, like replacing a shower head that worked just fine. Why? Good months, I got 80% of the rent I had been counting on in those spreadsheets I spent so much time on, but there were a lot of months where there was nothing coming in. So what does it mean when you have a mortgage on 2 properties with no money coming in? Risk. How long can you remain solvent? The properties were supposed to be net positive. Instead, I never even bothered putting them in the income section of my budget sheet because it was so unreliable. I realized that I have no stomach for the degree of risk that comes with increased debt. I once thought that I would buy 1 property per year. I can easily afford the down payments. But each one is another amount that becomes a tighter noose around your neck when the tenants don't pay. I sold my first property after the tenant got evicted. I sold the most recent one after I had a dream that COVID caused the economy to crash to 2008 levels and it lost half its value. I just don't have the stomach for that level of risk. Lessons learned. Do not invest out of state unless you have multiple, personal connections that have worked with the property manager in the past. I still don't know if they f***ed me over or if I got unlucky with the properties/tenants. I suspect it's a bit of both. They certainly padded the to-do list when turning the units over by at least 50%. I was charged $400 to haul away the debris after 1 turnover. Get a separate property manager, realtor, and attorney with no connections to each other. You need checks and balances. Understand how much risk you can stomach. Know yourself. I have a fuck you money amount of savings in cash because I'm just inherently not a very risk-taking person. You don't want your investment to keep you up at night. Talk to the PM before signing anything on what the process is to end your relationship with them if things go south. Document it. This one is kinda random, but if you're trying to keep your investment a secret from family, put it in an LLC. Wholesale vultures called my estranged father trying to get him to sell them his property in city. Which was just great when I purposefully didn't tell anyone about the investment to keep my financial situation under wraps. So, in the end, I'm a failed real estate investor. Due to property appreciation, I basically broke even on 1 property and made maybe $20,000 on the sale of the other, so it was just a colossal waste of time for the number of trips across country, all the transaction fees, etc. Hope this was useful info for someone. Like I said, I never told any of my friends or family about any of this, so Reddit is all I've got to get this off my chest. I am an active investor, an agent, and can agree that there are some major difficulties, and you certainly do have to assess and be comfortable with the risk involved. From your story, it sounds like your property manager was a disaster. That is not surprising at all. It's a hard job and most property managers are terrible. They can make or break your experience. A secondary problem seems to be the condition of the properties. Stuff breaks, that is PAR for the course. However, when you purchase and go through the inspection process, you should have some idea how much you will be spending on repairs. Current repairs and future capital expenditures should be in your budget. I buy to renovate and expect low out-of-pocket expenses in the first few years after renovation. I prefer to spend the money up front and save some future headaches, plus this helps me drive up the value of my properties. If you buy a property with a lot of deferred maintenance or where many of the major systems are at/ near the end of their useful life, then you have to be prepared for regular large expenditures until the major systems are more up to date. In my opinion, your agent should have prepared you a little more for that, but not all agents know investing. Sorry to hear it didn't go as well as you had hoped. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for your thoughts. I think real estate is still a great option for someone who can invest locally and use their personal connections and keep an eye on things. Just not an option with the crazy prices here, CA. I think it is the relationship between property manager and investor. Both have different goals and I believe an antagonistic relationship. PM makes money when investor is screwed. I have seen excitement only when there is repairs involved. I also feel a lot of PMS are in the property game. The better tenants with good scores and jobs do not even make it to you and will land with the PMS personal property. Not always the case, but I think a possibility. Motto is to stay local if possible. Control is everything. Being able to drive and verify repairs and get multiple quotes is important. This exactly on both counts. The PM had their own properties. Other thing you can do is give the PM a percentage of gross collections each month. I would never hire a PM who demands to be paid on repairs. Gross collections incentivizes the PM to maximize your revenue. Even better if you can get the guy to take a percentage of net income after all other expenses, but the PM doesn't get paid in that case if the property goes negative. If you were paying the guy for repairs, no wonder you had a rocky relationship. First rule of any business is to align incentives, and you may not have done that. Thanks for sharing this, and I'm truly sorry things didn't work out better for you. The number that stands out to me is the $10,000 per turnover. Can you talk more about what that entailed? I would think that's something like 50% of your annual gross income. No. That would absolutely destroy any property I've ever owned, but my turnover is maybe 5% of that. Would love to learn about the difference. Lastly, very curious what inclined you to invest out of state. Was that a deliberate choice or local properties didn't offer good options or something else? Thanks again for this information. I think it comes down to getting fleeced by the PM. When we had turnover, they'd go through the unit and write up everything that needed fixing. Everything from tub missing a stopper to a hole in a closet door. Obviously some of that needs to be fixed, but not everything. They'd paint in between tenants even when they painted 1 year prior. They'd also add on a bunch of shit like replacing working appliances or the countertops, etc. I'd have to fight them on everything to basically ask what here actually needs to be done to get the unit rented. Why are we painting the basement floor? Why does the carpet need replacing? Can't we just clean it? And since I'm not there and not a handyman, my ability to push back was limited. I thought the PM and I would both be making money off the tenants. Turns out they made money off me and the tenants were a fun side business. It seemed like you were doing okay, and just needed to find a new property manager. I don't get this post at all. In my market, I have watched plenty of people make significant money on properties that start off barely covering their PITI. Not saying that is a good plan exactly, but it does get better with time. If you had appreciation as well, it sounds like you were at a good position but didn't realize it because you didn't have a stomach for the stress. Wholeheartedly agree on all counts. I considered trying to find a new one instead of selling, but didn't feel equipped to pick a good PM, so it would probably be another random chance selection, since I don't know anyone who lives in this city. And this is kind of crazy, but I wasn't even sure how to go about switching. Our contract didn't have an end date listed on it. Was it only for a year? Presumably, but I didn't know and didn't want to ask. I agree that picking out a good PM can be an overwhelming task. That's why I invested in my local market, even though it doesn't have great returns compared to Middle America. You sound like a smart person that figured out what would be best for you. And that's most important. Even if you could have done it, what's the point of making a little extra money if it keeps you up at night? Especially when returns in the stock market are so good. Thanks for sharing your experience. It helps to balance out all the unbridled optimism in the sub. I apologize if you've already answered this, and kudos for taking the time to write that obviously way more common experience than we know about, but I'm wondering why you decided to go out of state as you already had FU money. Typically the expensive areas provide better appreciation opportunities with less tenants, but also less cash flow. But were there no opportunities for a typical 20% down SFH that could get $200 to $300 a month? I'm in Vegas, which is amazingly a hybrid of average rent and high demand housing, so you don't get the cash flow but huge appreciation opportunities, which may not be bad if you only have 1 to 2 tenants instead of 4+. No, there are no opportunities nearby that earn positive cash flow. You can still make money in flipping, I guess, but that's not something I was ever interested in, and the stakes are high. Buy a 700K teardown to resell at 1.8 M. Couple things I noticed. I have never and probably will never invest in property that I can't reasonably drive to at any time. I just don't trust PMs. There's sort of an antagonistic relationship from the start. They make money when investors lose money. I also would not use a PM for my first few properties. This lets you create a baseline of what is truly normal and expected. Otherwise, the PM will just keep annoying you to spend money you don't need to. Also, it looks like your research into the cash flow opportunity of both places was sound. You should maybe look at opening a business that simply directs clients into homes that cash flow. I've seen it done successfully because a lot of people with high cash flow don't want to waste time learning and looking. They want to pay money and start making money immediately. Sounds like the op didn't understand CapEx and current state of their property. Every major item, when I buy, gets assessed and a CapEx amount is set aside monthly. This is a standard practice that many people don't do, unfortunately. I also think the housing market is going to crash soon, so you were very wise to sell the properties when you did. Thank you for detailing your experience. I'm sure this will be very helpful to people considering this. The details you listed are great. I'm sorry you had a difficult time. I also sold my rental property after a tenant destroyed it. I had lived in that property and it just broke my heart to see it destroyed. I fixed it up and sold it. Why? We have more liquid cash looking for real assets currently. We don't have overlending. And there is desperate housing shortage soon to be expanded by an end to rent moratorium. Where is your prediction coming from? We have record-breaking unemployment levels, approximately 1/3 of Americans are behind on their rent or mortgage, businesses are failing, and the housing prices have increased at a far more rapid pace than salaries. The eviction moratorium went into effect in Sept, which is after my post. This prohibits evictions through December 31st. This does not waive past due rent. When this is lifted, there are going to be a large amount of people that are evicted for non-payment. Homeowners that have been out of work and are seriously behind on their mortgages will lose their homes due to foreclosures. All of these items are going to drive down the housing market prices. It's not a matter of if this will occur, but rather it's when this will occur.
If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.